You left, or you are leaving, or you have been standing at the door long enough to know that leaving is no longer a question of whether, only of when. And now you are in the in between. No room to point to, no title to stand behind, no clear answer to the question people keep asking. So, what are you doing now? And underneath that question, quieter, more personal, a question you might be asking yourself: did I make a mistake? My name is Hannah Ola. I work at the intersection of identity, life transitions, and becoming. And today I want to talk about the room nobody prepares you for. Not the room you built, not the door you couldn't open, but the space on the other side of it. Room 3, the corridor. In the 4 rooms framework, which I introduced a few weeks ago on this channel, the corridor is room 3, the in-between, the space that opens up after you have walked through the locked door and before room 4, the room you are building, has taken its shape. Those of you who follow the Becoming Map will recognize this as stage 2, the liminal space. The corridor is that same territory seen through a specific lens, the lens of having left something you helped build. And what makes the corridor different from any other in-between you have navigated is this: your identity was built inside that room. Your sense of purpose, your professional self, your place in a community, all of it was constructed in relation to what you left. Which means the corridor is not just unfamiliar territory. It is territory where the map you have always used no longer applies. There are 3 specific panes of the corridor. I want to name all 3 because naming them is often the first thing that makes them bearable. The first is the identity without walls. When someone asks you what you do in the corridor and you open your mouth to answer, you realize you don't quite know how to say it without referencing the room. Not because you have nothing to say, but because for years, the room was the context for everything. The title, the community, the daily structure, all of it gave the answer its shape. And without those walls, the answer feels incomplete, like you are introducing yourself without the sentence that used to make sense of all the other sentences. The second pain is the absence of the battle. This one is harder to name because it sounds strange when you say it out loud, because it is real. And I have heard it in different forms from almost everyone who has navigated this space. The room gave you a battle, a daily contest, a clear opposing force, a defined objective, a structure that told the day what it was for. Even when the room was costing you, even when the walls were closing in, the battle gave the day its shape. And in the corridor, there is no battle. There is an open field. And open fields are not always liberating. Sometimes they are simply very, very quiet. The corridor asks you to build purpose from inside rather than finding it in the structure of the battle. And that For people who have lived inside rooms their whole careers, is perhaps the hardest thing the corridor requires. The third pain is the question you are afraid to ask. Did I make a mistake? The corridor has a particular way of making the room you left look better than it was. Not because it was better, but because the discomfort of the in-between is new and sharp, while the discomfort of the room was familiar and therefore manageable. The mind, in the absence of certainty, reaches for what it knows. And what it knows is the room, which is why people leave rooms and then talk themselves back into returning. Not because the room deserves them, but because the corridor is uncomfortable in a way they were not prepared for. I want to say this clearly. The discomfort of the corridor is not evidence that you made a mistake. It is evidence that you are in transition. Those are not the same thing. So, what do you do with the corridor? Not how do you get through it faster. The corridor takes as long as it takes. Rushing it, reaching for the nearest available certainty, accepting the first room that opens its doors is the most common way people end up back in a version of what they just left. What the corridor asks of you is something different, something more important. It asks you to learn to carry your gifts without needing a room to legitimize them. There are 3 questions I want to leave you with, not to answer now, but to sit with, to return to let work on you while the corridor does what it needs to do. The first question: what did I bring to that room that existed before I entered it? Your gifts, your instincts, your particular way of seeing problems, of leading people, of caring about things that matter. These preceded the room. They are yours. The corridor cannot take them. The second question: what did that room ask me to leave at the door? Am I ready to pick it up now? The parts of you that were too much, too ambitious, too vocal, too certain, these ideas that went unvoiced, the version of yourself that the room had no category for, those parts of you are still here. They did not stay behind when you left. They were waiting for exactly this, a corridor with no walls, to tell them they were too much. And the third question, perhaps the most important: what does the room I build next need to be able to hold that the last one couldn't? That question, answered slowly, honestly, in the corridor, is how room 4 gets built differently. Not as a replica of what you left, but as something truer, something that finally has room for who you actually are. The corridor is not the punishment for leaving. It is the necessary space between who you were and who you are becoming. If you are in it now, I want to say something directly to you. You are not lost. You are between. Those are not the same thing. You are not empty handed. You are carrying more than you can currently see because the corridor has not yet shown you what you brought out of every room before it. And you are not behind. The corridor takes as long as it takes. And what it builds in you, the capacity to carry your gifts without needing a room to legitimize them, is the thing that makes room 4 unlike any room you have been in before. Next week, we go into room 4, the room you are finally building for yourself. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Drop a comment. Tell me which of the 3 pains you are sitting with right now. I read every single one. My name is Hannah Ola. You are not lost. You are between. And the between is doing something in you that cannot be done any other way.